Quick, say all the rude words. Okay.
All right, 5 minutes out. Yeah, I assumed we'd get there at some point. Okay, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 30 seconds. I'm going to start the recording for the VOD. All right, and unmuting. Everyone's good to go? Just last check. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meticulous Talks on September 3rd. I am, as always, Chris Accords.
I'm solving problems.
And today, we have a very special guest. You see his name up on the stream. At least I hope you do. He is sort of a man about the town and the community. Winner of several tournaments, finalist of several tournaments this year. Contributor to Commentaries Magic. Author of the Tumblr blog Cloud Chaser and Footer Explain. Need I say more? I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about because his name's on the screen. Emperor Ebugle, welcome to the stream.
Hello.
So today we're basically just going to be doing a little question and answer session. Nothing particularly formal, just having a conversation. Because, well, Ebugle won the Gen Con tournament, and I wanted to interview whoever won. I thought at the time it was a little unfortunate. Hope you don't take that the wrong way, Ebugle, because you already have your own stream. You can tell people your opinion on Commentaries Magic whenever you want. But in any event, we're happy to have you.
Despite it being unfortunate.
Despite it being unfortunate, yeah. But anyway.
Hey, him being here makes us look better.
It does. It does. That's certainly true. But yeah, I don't know if I already gave people a pretty good introduction. You can say anything else about yourself if you want to before we get into this.
Oh, that's fine.
Sure. So, I suppose we'll get right into it. So, I mean, you put the thread up to Reddit about how you've been trying for 4 years to win the Continental Championship, and 2017 obviously you did it. Like, how much does that mean to you to finally take home this crown?
Well, it was pretty nice. The past 3 years, like I'm the only person who's made top 16 in North America all 4 years right now. And a lot of the times it was just really unfortunate thing that happened. In the finals last year, like it was a mirror match, so it was just luck. The year before that, had I paid one to draw a card on my last turn of the game, or my second last turn of the game, rather, I would have won that game. And the round before, or the year before, I had a bad judge call that gave me a game loss that I just didn't think to contest. And then the third game, I just had the worst luck I had all tournament. And so a match that I should have easily won became a loss in the top 8. So it's relieving to see that there weren't any catastrophes this time.
To see there is some justice in the world.
Yes. Though, if you saw that second game, you might have thought otherwise.
The second game of the final?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, something to improve on for next year,
Right.
right? So, for anybody who wants to see a sort of complete retelling, or at least a reasonably detailed retelling, you did post a sort of summary document to the subreddit.
Yes. We also have full VODs, so you could watch the full 2.5-hour experience of that finals match.
Yeah, it was something. It was something to see. I was sitting right beside the table as it happened. For anybody who wants to know, yeah, it was some of the most tense, one of the most tense games of ponies I've seen in a very long time.
It didn't start out that way. The first game, we were being super casual.
I know.
Just joking at each other and like, oh, I wonder if that's a yellow Parasprite. Why could that couldn't possibly be a yellow Parasprite. Yeah. But as the stakes rose, the moods got more
Well, I remember thinking as I was sitting watching that first game, it's like, you guys are both playing control decks and you're talking this much. We're going to be here all night.
And then we were.
Yeah. So, I assume. Well, I'm not entirely certain. I'm not entirely sure about your early history of the game. You've been here pretty much the whole time, right? Ever since Premiere, I assume.
I got a box shortly after Premiere first came out, along with my friend, and we both played really badly against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, my work didn't let me go to a local game store because I was working at the time that the games happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically played 3 or 4 games against him, and then that was it. Didn't play anything else until just before Candlelit Nights came out. Then my work schedule changed, and I found I had the free time to play those evenings.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and again, I was still pretty bad at the game. You can theoretically still find my first primer on there, which coincidentally is a purple, pink, and white deck, control deck.
Is that so?
Using, yes, only Premier cards.
Purple, pink, and white. So Twilight, Nate?
I believe it was Twilight. Yes. Yeah, it was definitely Twilight because I had learned the hard way that Pinky was not worth playing, and Rarity just didn't have the control strategy that Twilight did. Plus, part of my entry was 3 gyros into 3 of the pink-white fixers, assuming that if I had a pink friend or a white friend, I could gyro into the other color.
Right. So what you're saying is basically this year Gen Con was just completing the circle.
Yeah. You start with pink, purple, white control, and you end with pink, purple, white control. It's fine. My second primer is a bit more infamous, though. Because
sure
that was
still before my time.
That was the first primer from Camelot Knights, and it came in 3 parts, sort of, because there wasn't a competitive, like, people were playing competitively, but there wasn't like an actual competitive scene. There was no OP or anything like that. No nationals announced, no regionals announced, anything like that. So the day that the OCR hit, a few of us in IRC, like I joined IRC super early and I completely ignored it since I couldn't play the game. But when I could play the game again, I started paying attention to it again. And there was someone named Gippy, and he saw Twilight Sparkle Element of Magic and said, I bet I could build a deck around this and it'll be super broken. And so a bunch of us worked around it, and we made something that resembled One Pace, but definitely wasn't One Pace because it used Outshine Them All and Amethyst Maresberry. And do you know what the problem with that plan is?
I think those cards have been too long off my radar for me to remember.
Okay, so Amethyst Maresberry. Oh, no, we didn't use Amethyst. Sorry, we used Perfect Paste, yes. Perfect Paste is pumped, and you can remove a card from him to give him +4 during a face-off, right?
That now, yeah.
So he wins face-offs pretty well. And Outshine Them All was a report that you attach to problems, and when you win a face-off there, you gain 1 action token. The problem, of course, is that showdowns don't take place at a problem. Well, the Camelot Knights showdowns don't.
Yeah.
So it didn't actually trigger Outshine Them All. So we had a problem. And what happened was I suggested, well, why don't we use Globetrotter? And so we built that deck, and it was the original version of it was definitely the best deck that existed, compared to all of the Premier only decks. It could just outspeed everything, and its only real problem was Flutter Guy out of Premier cards. If you're familiar at all with the Camelot Knights meta, you will see that the meta did adapt to One Pace. It kind of defined the meta, because if you couldn't deal with One Pace, you just were in a awkward situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, the original version used the ultra rare Luna main, and was super slow because it was tutoring stuff, and it was awkward. But yeah, that's basically what started my career. Like, despite the fact that I had that first primer, I bet you no one remembers it. Everyone remembers the One Pace primer.
I mean, I do kind of feel sometimes like the history of this game is a chronicle of combo decks, and recorded history starts with One Pace then, right?
If you're only going to care about the combo deck, sure. There were 4 pretty well-known decks in the Premier era. There was yellow-purple control. There was purple-orange control that was kind of farming. Like, really, it was the first farming deck, just no one called it farming. Then there was purple-white control, and there was blue-yellow aggro. And those were basically the only decks that were played competitively in the Premier era.
Yeah. I feel like I remember, I remember like blue-yellow aggro a little bit, but only like the adaptation that went into it, into Catalan Heights and stuff. But
yeah.
Yeah. So, so you've been playing for 4 years. Just to come back to Gen Con, I kind of want to know how is it for you, like the night before the tournament like that? You've been playing for so long. Did you still get nervous coming into games, or is it all just routine now?
Not the night before.
Okay. Okay, so like the morning of, say. Or,
yeah.
Yeah, obviously not the night before, I guess.
For Swiss, I wasn't too worried at all because I only needed, I was going into it with 3 buys, and I didn't know how many rounds there were going to be, but I'm like, I'm sure I only need to win 2 or 3 games and I'll be fine. And lo and behold, I only needed to win 2 games.
Yeah.
Plus, I was expecting a Hot Wings meta, and my deck is just very, very strong against Hot Wings. I did only play against 2 Hot Wings decks, but in Swiss, I played against 3 aggro players, and aggro is just my best matchup. So.
Right. Yeah, I actually wanted to get to that as like second thing. Like, just the week before, you had gotten second place with Cruel Mistress at BronyCon.
Yes.
And you did then switch back to Vinyl Stagger Tricks for Gen Con. Was that purely a meta call, or was that just the deck you feel more comfortable with?
Cruel Mistress, because I'm friends with Critical. Like, we're both in Colorado. And I decided I was intrigued enough by the deck that I would try it out at BronyCon. I tried it out incorrectly. I misread one of the cards, and it just made my life miserable. But in top 8, it was pointed out to me how the card worked correctly. And I like the deck a lot better when it works correctly. But it was just not how I wanted to be playing. So I was pretty sure I was going to play VBot during Continentals, and the week before, I was testing Cruel Mistress to see if I liked it better, and I didn't. So I just went back to what I knew.
Fair enough. Yeah, you're still there, Solving, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just listening.
Okay, fair enough. I'm starting to get a little worried we dropped you off the call there. Yeah. So,
What card did you misread?
I misread Spoiled Rich. I thought she moved all characters. She only moves your opponent's characters and all troublemakers. The fact that it behaves differently for characters and troublemakers is what threw me off.
And apparently, a number of judges, I think, who watched a couple of your Swiss round games as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because every time I played the card, I would explain it moves all characters, and my opponent would just take my word for it. I think some of them read it and then agreed that it moves all characters, which let me do some really fun stuff, just not legal stuff. I triple confronted because I had my characters were all at one problem. I moved Spoiled Rich to a Tyrix Reign of Terror, and then I portaled Spoiled Rich to my problem, which moved in this fictional world that I had created. All of my characters there as well, so I triple confronted, even though that was completely illegal and shouldn't have happened. But had I been playing the game correctly, like, I wouldn't have needed to do that in the first place. So most of the time I was cheating to my detriment, but that one play was like beneficial to me.
Yeah.
Is it really cheating when it doesn't help, though?
No. It is called misplaying. It's
pretty
cheating
much.
when you.
It's
do it
cheating
with
when it's
intent.
beneficial. It's misplaying when it just makes everything worse.
Well, it's handicapping when you are doing it intentionally and it's worse. But since it was unintentional, it was just misplaying regardless. The number one rule of being a judge is read the freaking card. And apparently
At least
I
4 times.
didn't see that. Yeah.
Right. So, as I said when I started, I was sorry, I was there to watch the final game at Gen Con, the final match.
Right.
I believe I should clarify, and like I already said, it was a really tense affair. But I want to focus on the final game itself. When we were
Game 3.
Yes, game 3. We had, I think, 40 minutes left in time control.
About 35.
35 when I started. And there came a point where I think we were about 20 minutes in, after you scored the 1 point, when I just sort of realized, like, my God, he's not going to score any more points. He's just going to sit on that. You kind of explained this a little bit in your summary document, but like, what was your sort of thought process leading into that decision?
Well, my thought process was I have 2 AT gens and he has 0. So I should try and leverage my AT advantage for as long as I possibly can. This wound up hurting when he got rid of all my AT gens and he had AT gens, so he got to flip it around on me. But still only 1 point had been scored, so I was still only cashing in 2 per turn. But by that point, there was so little time in round, and he still had to deal with the study session. There was a troublemaker at both problems. He had played a Jess clowning around, but he had no way to confront it. You know, because I had a study session and removal tools. So he told me at the end of the game that he had like a 3 or 4 turn plan to confront for 1 point, but he just didn't have the time. Because like neither of us were slow playing. Like we took reasonable amounts of time on our turn, and those like last 2 or 3 turns of mine, like I was playing faster than I probably should have. Like I didn't need to. I'm just like, I'm going to be nice about this. I'm going to give him that shot to try and score that point, give him those turns he needs. But it wound up being 1 point, 0 points. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I was there. Yeah, those were electric moments, really. Seeing that just clowning around coming down, and
he played that and then passed turn immediately, and I'm like, interesting. You're not even playing a shining armor there or anything. Yeah, like you said, that turn that I did beat up that yellow Parasprite, I had the opportunity to score a 2nd point. I decided, though, I'd exhaust Vinyl and draw a card and not score that point. And then he uncovered Chrysalis, which forced everyone back. So I didn't even have the opportunity to score any more points. Had that wound up being a yellow Parasprite, I probably would have fought it again. But because it was Chrysalis, I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. Let's just ignore that problem.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense the way that you put it. Like your extra AT is a bigger advantage the less AT there is in the game. So why not just keep it on a kind of low economy sort of footing?
Yeah, because I believe at that point there were 17 minutes left in round, like I asked, how much time was left in round, and I was told 17 minutes, and I was thinking, yeah, I think I can hold 1 point for 17 minutes. So I did it, and that wound up being a correct decision. I don't know if it was the correct decision, but it worked out.
Yeah. So, and of course, as we've said several times, if you want to go watch that game, it was live streamed. I overrun commentaries, Magic, all their various media.
Yeah.
It's really top tier ponies on display
there. Yeah. Personally, I feel the second game, the game that I lost, was probably the best game I've ever played. Or I made a massive misplay at the end, but I think the game itself was just really, really good. If you do watch the commentary, at the end there, Critical is basically just yelling at me, telling me that I did things wrong.
Oh, I haven't actually had the chance to see that yet. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, why did you do this, Ebugle? Why? If you lose game 3, I'll be super sad, disappointed in you.
I mean, I guess now that I think about it, he was maybe like one of the perfect commentators for that match, having another control player on there.
Mm-hmm.
Must have been something. So, I guess just to move on, I was taking a look at your record for this past year, people.
Okay.
Now, I believe you were the winner at Babstar, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Second place Everfree. Second place
yes.
BronyCon, and then obviously first place Gen Con. Which is that's a pretty stellar year by most measures. I hope you agree.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, I think you could probably even count on one hand the number of games you've lost in tournament play this year, based on the way that.
This year, yes, that would be 4.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming you're only talking about the Harmony tournaments.
Yes, of course. So, I don't think it's...
Well, no, you said tournaments, so it would actually be 5, because no, it would be 7, because regionals I didn't do. Yeah, I lost. No, that's not true at all. 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think it's about 10, actually.
Okay, fair enough. Either way, I think the point that you're one of the most consistently successful players in the game right now stands.
Sure.
And so, standing right now, reasonably to say, kind of at the top. What's next year for Ebugle? Where, what's your goal to go from here?
I don't know. I might try and run aggro decks. Like a lot of people recently have been saying that they don't think aggro is as good as control, and I think the issue there is people aren't looking for aggro's answers to control. Like you take Hot Wings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Hot Wings is, especially the Bluna version, it's very aggressive, but it runs out of cards quickly, right? So if it doesn't win soon, it will lose, basically, unless it locks out with time.
Of course.
But some people at Gen Con took very minor modifications. My round 4 opponent, for example, swapped the 3 Wonderbolt straps, a card that I feel is absolutely fantastic in Hot Wings, and turned them into Uneven Grounds, which gave it a much, much better matchup against control. And my opponent said that it had been working out for him very, very well. It didn't work out against me, but I kind of had the nuts draw against him. Like he could have been drawing perfectly and playing perfectly, and my draw was just too perfect for him to overcome in that particular deck. But had I been playing a normal average game, and had he had one of those uneven grounds, he would have had a much better matchup than say Hot Wings Blazing deck that doesn't have the uneven grounds. Similarly, if you look at Yellow has a lot of good anti-control tools right now. The problem is it doesn't have any anti-aggro tools, so it loses to other aggro decks, but those aggro decks are losing to control where this deck, the yellow ones are not losing to control. I made a Fluttershy blue deck that looks at its opponent's troublemakers and goes, that's cute. I have 12 ways around that in this deck.
Right.
So I think aggro can be very successful. I think people are just they're only looking at the aggro cards that help you aggro rather than the aggro cards that help you get out of bad situations.
So they're building the deck as if their opponent is a goldfish.
I think some players are, but I think other players are just assuming my opponent is also going to play aggro.
Right.
How can I out aggro them?
Everyone's just trying to be the fastest kid on the block.
Right. Which is why you see a lot of these mono blue decks, because mono blue decks are very, very fast. Like that is the one thing that they do very, very well. But if you throw one wrench in the gears, they have a lot of trouble. If you were watching some of the BronyCan stuff, you got to see that with Max's deck. So maybe I'm going to try aggro in the future, but I don't know. Control is just where I'm more comfortable. So maybe I'll just stay control. But I'm still going to do all of the things that I do. I mean, I'm still going to be working on Sim. I'm still going to be making primers that are way too long. I'm still going to make cafes when I have the time.
Of course. We wouldn't expect anything less.
Right.
And how much worse does Control get if you stop playing it, right?
Top 2 decks this year for Control. So
I certainly don't argue with you that it appears the strongest archetype right now. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, that being said, Control did get some pretty nuts tools. Aggro got some nuts tools too, but Control got some pretty great tools, though.
You're talking about Defenders, of course, I assume.
I'm talking about Defenders, yeah. Defenders. I guess Belly Flop is a Control tool and an aggro tool, but it works really well in my deck because you gyro for it. That's you play gyro. That's 1 AT. You draw the belly flop, and then you play the belly flop. That's 2 AT to get rid of any friend in the game.
And you just coincidentally happen to have an excellent retirement target in gyro.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And it doesn't it takes 2 cards, quote unquote, but you're finding one of them, so it doesn't really take 2 cards. And if you have to already have the belly flop and then you play the gyro to find something else, and now you have other removal or whatever, it was a pretty great Control combo. Though again, belly flop is obviously very good in aggro as well. When you go, let me play belly or berry punch and orange swirl and take your control friend that's annoying me, and then I'll belly flop your control friend and your other control friend or whatever.
The card itself is just good tempo, so it's good in everything.
But
and it's not like it's got a cost that's expensive or costs 0, but you do something else. It's just 1, so it's very easy to fit in anything.
Yeah, belly flop is, in my opinion, belly flop is the best removal card in the game right now. And my opponent Josh wasn't running any, and that's because all of his friends were expensive. He didn't have any 1-cost friends. I can belly flop a Rainbow Shine or a Paper Twilight if I absolutely need to, but it feels awful. And so I can understand why he wasn't running them, but because he was running the full 3 nap cakes, and that usually is good enough. But yeah, I don't feel that if you are running expendable targets and you are running pink, you should be running belly flop.
I mean, yeah, that totally makes sense. So, but let me come back to Miles Bag of Tricks here for a second.
Sure.
It was your brainchild, or at least I'm reasonably certain it was you were the
Yes.
progenitor of the deck, and I think, or at least it was the first deck that like really publicly took advantage of what we now call toolboxing.
No,
It was
that would be Zipperwill.
Zipperwill did that. That's correct. Fair
enough. Admittedly, Zipperwill didn't do that with Gyro. It just did it with its absurd numbers of Meticulous. Like, you would still play Owls even when you had no need for purple entry, just because it had Meticulous 1, and you could go, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. This card, this 5th card down. I'll take this one into my hand instead.
Yes.
It had a lot of singletons in the deck, and it used F-stop to bring them back, similar to Bag of Tricks.
Yeah, okay, that's correct. So it's become, I suppose, as you say, you know, with Zipperwill doing it, it's become sort of a very sort of common control tactic.
Yes.
And it seems like really, really strong. And obviously, when we're in this, you know, when we're in one particular swing of the meta, it's very easy to say, like, I can't imagine anything would ever come along that's better than that. But, like, do you think that there could be other ways to do control? Like, it seems so good.
I mean, again, my second place opponent was not playing Toolbox Control. And he placed higher. He, in fact, beat a Cruel Mistress, which is Toolbox Control. He actually did he? I think actually I'm misremembering the matchups. I think he actually didn't play against Ivory. I think Ivory played against his brother. But you know, I don't think it's necessary. If you look at the top 16 list, you'll note that there are several control decks, including the mono orange control deck, which did just fine, top 16. And it was honestly the deck that I was most scared of out of those 15 players. He unfortunately got eliminated round 1 to the deck that I played in the finals, but I think it's a perfectly reasonable way to control. Like, Toolbox gives you answers to everything, but you don't inherently need that. Plus, it's in my particular version, it's very risky because I am relying on recurring things out of my discard. If anyone has any way to stop me from doing that, then I've suddenly lost half of my deck, 3/4 of my deck.
I see. Okay. Yeah. The orange deck you're referring to, I'm pretty sure, is the one that you're going to be talking about tonight, if I recall correctly.
Yes. Yeah, it's Grandpa's deck. Yes.
Yeah.
It has an incredibly long name that I have not memorized, and it has a shorter but also long name that I have also not memorized. I just call it Banish Time.
Yeah, and anyone who's interested, well, tonight, Counter's Magic, they're going to be explaining. I assume someone over there has the whole thing memorized, so if you want to...
I don't know if he has it memorized, but he does have it written down.
All right, fair
enough. I was about to say that. It's probably just written down.
Well, I think that wraps up essentially all the questions I had related to the tournament. Did you want to ask about that, Solomon, before we sort of move on?
Well, just sort of from a sort of, I guess, pro player perspective, how long do you think you have to test a deck before you're comfortable taking it to a big sort of event?
How long? Oh, I don't know. I've been playing Vinyl's Bag of Tricks in some incarnation or another since October or November last year. So, like, just admittedly, the deck changed when Defenders hit, and I'd been tweaking the Defenders version a lot. Like, it had a Destiny Drain for a while. Which I ultimately took out because I expected 0 combo at Gen Con. Joke's on me, there was 1. But I didn't need the Destiny Drain there. And it would have only been useful in a control matchup, which would have only been terribly useful to me in the finals. So I'm not super sad that I didn't include it. But yeah, I don't like. I would say you should probably be playing your deck for a minimum of a month beforehand if you're trying to go for the highest tier. If you're going for a local scene like regionals or whatever, you could probably do with just 1 week or 2 weeks. But for the highest scene, I would recommend at least a month. That being said, some of my teammates did not adhere to that. Admittedly, Cheese did not make top 16, so I can't point to that as a successful story because he didn't make it. He picked a deck last week and it didn't work out for him. Grandpa's, though, had been playing his deck for a bit longer than that, so he did make top 16. So. Just play a lot of games, I think, is really it. That's more important than an actual time period. Just play a lot of games.
Cool.
Yeah, actually, no, sorry. Keep going, Solomon, if you want.
Oh, I'm just trying to think if any of the other questions I have are more directly related to tournament stuff. Nah, not really. It's more just general questions.
Okay. So one thing that I thought about as I was hearing that conversation, right? We had formerly in the past, the games had a reasonably regular cadence of releases, right? Of new sets,
Sure.
Yeah, and then we had this very long march in time, and as you guys, commentators, management is pointed out in your retrospective, it was a very long period of one set, but the meta stayed. It did change a lot over the course of that year or however long it was, and
right,
which is still in some respects a good thing. I don't think anyone's going to argue that it wasn't too long of a time without new cards, but there was still a fair amount of variation and people really figuring out what was good in the card set. So do you think that things are, like I said, that was clearly too long, but do we need more of that sort of maybe a little bit longer time between sets, or is
I think the distance between Sequestria and Defenders is just fine.
Okay.
So, the distance, well, actually, let me correct that. I think the distance between Nationals and Sequestria is just fine. I think the distance between Defenders and Nationals is probably a little too short. Just because people want time to make their top tier competitive deck, and it's difficult to do that when there is a set that is coming out but is not out yet, but will be out pretty briefly before Continentals. I think there was about 2 months between the two.
And was let's see, Defenders was in June, I think. So yeah, about 2 months.
Right. So I feel like it would have been nice for there to have been one more week, or not week, one more month. Like if Defenders had come out a month earlier, I think that would have been a little nicer.
Which, to be fair to Enderplay, I think that's what they were trying to do. There was a delay.
We had a lot of potential release dates.
Yeah.
But yeah, no one outside of Enterplay knows the full story. I'm willing to give them a lot of the benefit of the doubt, but obviously not everyone has.
Anyway, yeah. So I suppose kind of the follow-on to that is like the competitive scene for the game, and I apologize if I'm being kind of too narrow-minded with regard to conventions here, but it seems like there's kind of like an on-season in the summer. Like kind of starts in April and sort of goes to Gen Con. And then there's this off-season where, there aren't a lot of major conventions happening. There isn't too much to report going on, right?
Right.
Not sure if I was going anywhere with that. I just kind of thought about that, and then there wasn't a question.
Pointing out facts.
Yeah,
sure.
There wasn't a question queuing at the end of that comment. So, yeah.
I don't know, do you think the metagame's better or worse for there sort of being a season rather than it being split out and having gaps?
I think it's for the metagame, I think it hurts the metagame, but I think it helps the players to not have to be able to go, I don't need to worry about competitiveness for a while. I'm just going to break out my crazy 4-color chaos deck that has no way of winning the game, but it does stupid, silly things, and it's fun. I think letting people have that downtime is very important. And it's also nice for the people who aren't competitive, because their competitive players aren't going, breaking out their crazy overpowered decks that, they have no chance against. They're like, man, like, I really just want to play with Rainbow Dash and go fast, and that's all I want to do, and I don't have any Night Gliders, and I don't have any point acceleration or anything. I just want to confront some problems and have some fun. And it's hard to do that when my opponent has played 5 Troublemakers in 5 turns. So I think it's good for the player base, but I do think it hurts the meta because people aren't thinking in competitive terms. I mean, some people are, obviously. Like, there are some people who just are always thinking competitive, but then there's people like me who are like, I can turn it on or off at will, and it's just very nice to go, I don't need to worry about this. I can play something silly.
Okay.
So for you, I guess, like, assuming that the general schedule, the general schedule of what we call the on-season stays pretty much the same for, like, when does the competitive season start for you then?
Yeah, I'd say about April.
April?
Maybe the month before, preparing for it. Like, I mean, sure, I made VBot before the end of year last year. That's just because I was bored and I wanted to start building decks again. But the deck that I was trying to build originally was a lot more casual than VBot. It was blue, like, it was still a control deck. It was still arguably a toolbox control deck. But it had blue instead of purple. And it was using AK Yearlings. Because back in the day, Ultra Rare AK Yearling was actually a good card and underplayed by a lot of players.
Was that on Camelot Knights?
Yeah, Camelot Knights, exhaust her to draw 2, discard 2.
Yeah.
Which was very, very good back in the day because, like, especially since I was using Vinyl Main, like, you would go through your deck really fast. Like, if you if you needed an answer, like having 2 or 3 AK yearlings in play, like drawing 7 cards, even if you're discarding 6 cards, like you will find that one card that you wanted. But yeah, I was just trying to make that deck work, and then I was thinking, well, why doesn't this deck work? Let me think about Zipperwill. Oh, it's because AK Yearling is infinitely worse right now than Paper Twilight. So what happens if I turn them into Paper Twilights? Oh, silliness happens. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess inspiration happens.
Yeah.
You can't really control that.
Yeah, I can't control the inspiration. But like I was just playing the deck casually against myself for a while, like just to see how it works. I didn't actually care about it competitive until we knew when BabsCon was and stuff like that. Well, I guess we knew when it was for a while, but you know.
Yeah, until it
when it was imminent.
Came onto the radar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So one question that I had after the Gen Con was that the meta as it stood right now, we see, and I want to focus on the color pink because it seems like to exemplify this the most. We see like Hot Wings being a thing. Pink isn't necessarily the most important color in Hot Wings, at least not in the most commonly run build, which is Luna. But it's still like a cornerstone of the deck. And then obviously we've got people like you and people like your competitor in the finals running pink as a very prominent control color. And so, you know, right now the color is very good at aggro and very good at control, it seems. And I suppose like the question is, and this kind of comes down to like a philosophy of the game. Do you think it's better if all of the colors are kind of good at everything but in slightly different ways, or if they're like, you know, purple's the control color and blue's the aggro color, and et cetera, et cetera?
No, absolutely. Every color should be able to do everything. Some colors might be able to do things better than other colors, but I don't think they should be not allowed to do it. For example, blue is shaping up to be a very good control color. You have cards like Torch, you have cards like Ember, you have cards like, you know, the Zomponies, for example, is even a control card. And I think it's fine to have blue be able to control. People play it as though it's only an aggro color, but it's got a lot of rather good control cards. Like Uneven Ground is not an aggro card. It is absolutely a control card. It is useful in aggro decks as a tool against control, but not because it's an aggro card. It's actually very bad at aggro. It slows you down because you can't bank either. If your control player has AT gens and you don't, like, it can actually sometimes be detrimental to play Uneven Ground. Unless you're like sapping like 15 AT, then joke's on them. So yeah, I think it's perfectly fine for colors to be able to do multiple things. Like, it's also perfectly fine for cards to do multiple things. Did you know that Tyrik's Reign of Terror is one of the best control cards in the game?
Oh yes.
Right?
Yeah, the ability to frighten something just repeatedly, or frighten
Yeah.
stuff on a level like it kind of like Torch before Torch, right?
Yeah, you play Tyrik's Reign of Terror. You don't confront it. You play a Troublemaker there instead. Now, if your opponent confronts it, you're fine because you're about to uncover a Troublemaker and it's going to scare them or whatever. And then you start confronting it now that it's blocked off. And now they have to deal with what is effectively a 2 AT drain every single turn. And that's pretty painful. It's especially good if you are playing in a color that can put a Troublemaker there face up. Like if you're using Zeroed Out, or if you're using Bell Tower, or even Rising Star. I made a blue-white control deck that can actually do that because it has 2 Rising Stars. the problem with the blue-white control deck is the main, unfortunately. If you can't flip your main because your opponent is also playing control and played Trollmakers, then you're in a bad shape.
You were playing
But
with
like
Wonderbolt?
Rainbow Dash, yes. Yeah, Wonderbolt. It's the best blue or white control main available right now. So that's the one I used.
I guess I wouldn't argue with that.
So I think it's perfectly fine for colors to be good at multiple things. Like speaking of white is the perfect example here. White has been the poster. Like white has been always supposed to be, quote unquote, a control color. Like everyone looks at white and goes, "Man, that is such a control color." But then if you look at the history of the game, you go, "Wait, why is white in all of these aggro decks?" Like for a long time, basically before Night Glider was printed, every single aggro deck was playing white, all of them, aside from the brief period where blue-yellow was in vogue. And it's because white can do multiple things, and there's no problem with that. So just because pink can do it, like every color can do it. Arguably, yellow does it the worst. Yellow has very poor control tools right now. But like every color can do it. Like a very popular aggro deck. It's not been like super competitive. At least not here in the States, but I know in Europe it's worked fine. Purple aggro is a huge thing. People like using Moondancer and Trixie and confronting problems, and there's nothing saying purple's not allowed to do that.
Of course, yeah. So one thing I guess I wanted to ask you, like kind of hearing you talk about it, and I know, Sequestria is not but a news release at this point. You talked a bit about blue and how it's got some things going on right now. Like, which colors do you think are sort of poised to have kind of a renaissance, if you will, where people like completely change the way they think about them? If that's a good question, maybe that's a little too vague, but.
Like right now or with Sequestria?
Well, I mean, obviously, like, Sequestria would have to be the impetus to create new stuff.
Okay. I mean, in general, I think a lot of players are going to continue to shoehorn colors into archetypes regardless. Like orange is the farming color, despite the fact that orange has demonstrated its ability to control and aggro quite well. People are just always going to look at orange as the farming color. So I think it would take more than just cards to shift people's minds. I mean, cards are important. Like, if we get like purple Night Glider, like we won't, obviously. Like this card will never be printed. But if we got purple Night Glider, and people started using, like people would look at that and go, well, that's weird because purple's not an aggro color. But once people start demonstrating how effective purple can be with this purple Night Glider, then people will shift their minds. So, like, I think the tools are there already for every color, except again possibly yellow. It's just the mindset is just hard to change.
Right. It's decks, not cards, that change people's minds, basically.
Right. Yeah. Decks.
Yeah. Which I suppose is kind of back to what you were saying before about how sort of the off-season of tournaments does kind of hurt the metagame a little bit, because that's where these new emergent decks come from, and people see them to the Reddit, and everyone's like, oh wow, that's apparently a thing now. I gotta try that. But yeah. So to change tack a bit here, I was rewatching our Solving an Eyes review of Defenders a little while back, and I suppose the thing that struck me the most, and the thing that's going to lead to a lot of our ratings being really, really wrong, was that both of us were really, really excited about Thorax, the main event.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, I believe there was one player running Thorax at Gen Con.
One.
Yes.
Yes.
But clearly he hasn't broken the meta.
No.
And so, I suppose, I experimented with him a little bit. I'm aware of some of his weaknesses, but, why exactly in your mind did the card really kind of underperform the hype, the expectations that a lot of people had?
I think part of the reason is because Angel Wings exists. I think if Angel Wings didn't exist, Pink Blue was already arguably the best aggro color combination. And then it got Angel Wings and Spitfire, both of which are just nuts strong. That being said, I think Angel Wings just let aggro decks go super fast. And if you're playing an aggro deck that doesn't have Angel Wings, it just feels you're too slow. So I think that's part of Thorax's problem. I think the other part of Thorax's problem is he is incredibly easy to disrupt. I've been saying for a long time that I feel Fluttershy Nurturing Nature is the better yellow main of the set. She is much harder to disrupt. You can still get her up to 6 power using Double Diamond. Frequently, I only get her up to about 4 power, but that's really good. 4 power is really good when you don't need to move it. Like, Thorax has a lot of power, but you still need to move him, and then what did that power really do for you? And your opponent can still bail out him. Your opponent can still Magicite him. Your opponent can get rid of your other friends to make him smaller, and now you're not confronting either problem. Well, Fluttershy basically says, unless you have basically bailout or a way to turn my main off, I'm going to confront a problem every turn, unless there are troublemakers in the way. And yellow is the best color at dealing with troublemakers.
Right.
So
yeah, that's actually a sort of way that I hadn't thought about it. But I mean, you're right. You can kind of treat Fluttershy almost as like this sort of stationary turret that's just sitting at your home, and you just aim it at the problem every turn. That actually is pretty powerful.
So, yeah, I think part of the reason is absolutely Angel Wings. Angel Wings is incredibly good, and that being said, the top aggro deck wasn't pink blue. It was blue orange, but it did angel wingy things. In that it had a lot of cost reduction, and it had a lot of ways to get power for 0 cost. Using a smart cookie to banish cards from your discard, for example, like you could just make a really big friend that didn't cost you anything. So I think that's part of the other issue yellow has. It doesn't have enough ways to cheat and free power. Like, you look at Thorax and you're like, oh, hey, like, now my critter is like, it's 1 cost 2 power, and that's great. But that's still not as efficient as other cards are being. And I think that's ultimately his problem. And people also look at him as farming. And the issue there is yellow doesn't have the anti-aggro tools. It doesn't have the anti-aggro tools, and comparing it to blue, it doesn't have the speed. So it just fell short of both farming mains at the time. Obviously, we have Twilight now as well, but yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I think in our autopsy of our own review, which I assume is going to come up at some point, perhaps autopsy is the wrong word, but meta review, whatever. We're going to be talking about that at some point. So, speaking of upcoming sets, first of all, solving. it's come to my attention that I've been lying to you. The movie actually comes out at the start of October, not the end.
Oh, okay.
Which means the sort of timetable for when Seacrest Korea might come out moves forward a little bit based on that. Obviously, we haven't. I don't believe we've heard anything save the initial release that said it is going to be a thing and it's going to be tied to the movie. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah. The unofficial word is that every card will be based off of the movie. Well, so. But yeah, there's no official release date or anything. I know they're shooting for October, but
okay. Well,
obviously they have missed deadlines in the past, so
yeah, fair enough.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take high money bets.
Sure, but I mean, credit where it's due for the ambition.
Yes, absolutely.
So, okay, best case scenario, a month from now we could be, or maybe a month and a half, 2 months from now, we could be looking at spoilers.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I kind of already asked sort of where, about the colors and sort of where you see the potential, but over the course of the last couple of streams, Sully and I have talked a little bit about sort of mechanics that we thought we wanted to see again, or stuff that we, thought the game could use. Did you have a wish list of, wouldn't it be awesome if this was in the game or something like that?
Not particularly.
All right.
It would be nice if Yellow had more ways of interacting with the opponent, but that's about it.
All right. Okay, that's fair.
I have a wish list for cards that I wish weren't in the game. Many of them you will find in my deck.
All right, that's fair.
But no, my wish list a year ago was I wanted. I got to solve my wish list for last year.
Okay, I think we all kind of get the implication there.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I guess considering that, just to fill anyone in, I assume you're talking about changing the mechanics when you say that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. My wish list there was I wanted non-epic troublemakers were not seeing a lot of play. We saw Armospies. We saw non-epic Starlight Glimmer used solely to get you to farm epics. And every once in a while, we would see a yellow Parasprite come back.
Card hasn't gotten any worse.
Yes. Sometimes we would see a double diamond. But for the most part, non-epic troublemakers just felt underwhelming. They didn't affect your opponent enough, or you couldn't farm them, or whatever. Yeah, there were just a lot of reasons that you didn't use them. And the only reason that Armosby saw play was because of epics. And, Yellow Parasprite saw play just because it had incredible disruption tools. So I wanted to have a powerful control tool. Trollmakers are theoretically supposed to be a fourth of the game, right? They're one of the 4 card types you can put in your deck, but no one was doing it except for farming. So I wanted to fix that problem, and I came up with the flavor for them first, which completely changed. They were not originally going to be changelings. The changeling that episode didn't even exist when I'd come up with the card. But I came up with the flavor, and then I tried to build a thing around that. And originally, it said you couldn't do it at all. Just rather than increasing the cost, you cannot play these cards. And that was too strong. So they kicked it back at 2. Like it's +2 AT.
Uh-huh.
And for flavor reasons, I said, well, can you make it 3? And they did that. And when I submitted the original thing, I said I want it to either be 3 power, 1 bonus, or 6 power, 2 bonus. But feel free to change those numbers if you need to. Like I just feel that, 3 power, 0 bonus, 6 power, 1 bonus. There we go. And we saw the second one is what happened. However, apparently when we bumped up the cost to 3, some people felt that it should have gone up to 2 bonus, and that didn't happen. And I think I actually agree. I think it should be a 2 bonus card, and I think it would still see play, and I think it would still be incredibly good. But yeah, I think there's not quite enough risk with it only being 1 bonus.
Right. I mean, it's certainly fair to say that most of the games I've seen it played, it didn't die.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps the problem got replaced from underneath it, or you swapped it in with some other troublemaker, but it doesn't lose the face-off, sort of normally speaking.
Yeah, it's very large power, and it's difficult to beat because if you're saying, well, it's +3 for you to play events, you can't cheaply use events to help you win that. And control players are infamous for having tricksy cards in their hand.
Yeah. So I suppose you've kind of gone into this already, sort of in that answer. But has changing mimics had the impact that you thought it was going to have?
Technically, no. In that it had more impact than I thought it would have. So.
Okay, I should have said at least.
Yes. That being said, again, you look at my my finals opponent there, and he elected not to use them at all. He used Yellow Parasprite instead. And I don't think that was inherently wrong. Yellow Parasprite is a good card. Like, no one's going to say Yellow Parasprite is a bad card. But yeah, I do feel right now it's just very, very strong, and the ability to change things as necessary also helps a lot.
All right. And so I guess as anyone who's sort of been paying attention to the news knows that having won Gen Con this year, you're going to have that opportunity again. I think you're going to be the only player with 2 created cards in the game right now, I think.
I mean, aside from the devs,
well,
but yes.
Of course, yes.
And I guess aside from the community cards, there were 2 community cards. So if anyone went to both of those, they would have helped make 2 cards.
Okay.
The 2 cards being Lyra Bond, and Remix Master.
Oh, really? I actually did not.
Yes.
I didn't know those. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously it's kind of early days. Who knows where your thinking's going to go? But do you have anything? Do you want to say anything about what your next card?
Well, everyone has been pressuring me to make a yellow aggro card.
Okay.
They've also been pressuring me not to make Changeling Mimics 2.0.
I can understand. I add my voice to that chorus.
It should be a yellow control card.
So I've had a few thoughts on the idea or on the matter, and right now I'm mulling over 2 different cards, which I like a fair bit in theory, but I'm going to wait and see what Sequestria gives us before I start giving Adam cards. He told me though that if I could have gotten him something that first week, he would have tried to get it into the set. However, I was very sick that week, And last thing on my mind was trying to create fair and fun and balanced cards. So that didn't happen.
Right.
But anyway, so my 2 cards right now, these are both yellow cards. They're both intended for use in aggro, though can obviously be used in other archetypes. The first one is a friend. 3 cost, and probably 3 rec, 3 power, though obviously all these numbers can be tweaked. Those aren't important. But while she's in play, your opponent can't, on your turn, your opponent can't cause your friends to leave play, effectively.
Oh, okay.
Or move.
Oh, or move.
Yes.
Right. So basically, there's like no. Yeah, yeah. Go on. It's kind of like a big umbrella, basically.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Maybe she says your other friends or your other characters or whatever. Maybe she doesn't. I don't know. But only on your turn. So the defenses come down on the opponent's turn.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it's supposed to be you can't interfere with my entry. You can't interfere with my confronts.
Yeah.
You can do stuff on your turn. You can still play Troublemakers. You can still play that food fight on your turn, but not on my turn. Because that's the big problem that Yellow had. Yellow is very good at confronting problems. Like it can do that. The problem is that the other player says no, and now Yellow hasn't been able to do anything. So I was trying to find a way to do that, and it has to be on your entire turn. You can't just do score phase or main phase, because then the control player will go, okay, now that the defenses are down, let me do the thing.
Yeah.
So it has to be both.
Right. Yeah. It reminds me kind of like, well, my first thought hearing it sounds kind of like a mix between Appaloosa and the Vote, and also a little bit better on that front. But yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
It kind of is. Appaloosa works on both turns, but stops only 2 specific things, and the Vote stops everything, but only on your turn and only once.
Yeah.
Oh, I think she was also supposed to stop Frightened too. Like, just no, like you can't touch my friends this turn. So no Frightened, no Leaf Blade, no moving. Like, just.
Oh, can that be a Celestia, please? Sorry.
It would flavorfully match a Celestia protecting every opponent.
I like that.
Especially if it was all other friends or all other characters, right?
But anyway.
The other card, this is the more fun card for sure. Like that card is kind of anti-fun because it's saying no, you can't do stuff.
Uh-huh.
This card is saying I'm going to do something, and it's going to be a lot of stuff. The name that I have suggested for it is "Say Hello to My Little Friends."
Okay.
Can you guess where it's going?
Well, kind of. Not really. I mean, go ahead.
Okay, so this would be an event. I wanted to cost it 3, but people have been telling me no. I think this needs to cost 4, and I think it would still see play if it cost 4 as a mono yellow event.
Four cost event that actually saw play. Okay, now I'm really interested.
So it lets you search your deck for a critter friend that costs 2 or less, and you get to put it into play. And then you get to do that again for all cards with the same name in your hand, discard, or deck.
Sorry. This is restricted to 2 or less critters?
2 or less critters.
Wait, cost or power? I missed that part.
Cost.
Okay, so you can't cheat in animal allies.
No.
I'm sorry.
Can't cheat in animal allies.
This is a main phase event, right?
This is a main phase event, yeah.
Okay.
But you can do stuff like, obviously, the first thought that's going to jump to everyone's head, obviously, is suddenly there are 3 bunyips.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And that's a fair number of points. another plan is you could find 3 of the banish opalescence. Suddenly you made 6 power and your opponent has lost up to 6 power worth of key friends.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, to be clear, that was put in play, right?
Put into play.
So you do get to ignore color requirements.
You get to ignore color requirements. But my favorite, my absolute favorite, is orange. Orange is a critter who, when he comes into play on your turn, you gain an action token and the opponent loses an action token. And he's 2 power.
Orange. Oh boy.
So
my knowledge of the corpus is failing me.
So for 4 AT, you have drained them of 3 AT, gained 3 AT, so that you've only spent 1 effectively and made 6 power on the board. That's my favorite usage of this card right now.
That's some pretty sincere value right there.
Yeah. And so like even with the restriction of 2 or more power, like there's some really cool stuff, or 2 or less power, sorry. There's some, not power, cost.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. Like I was thinking of not having a restriction, and maybe you could do that, but then, then you could do stuff like find Vexing Tank, which is really good. Harry, just 15 power, calming 9. It's great.
Yeah.
This seems like a really fun card. And I kind of like it more than the other card right now, just because you get to be doing huge splashy things instead of stopping your opponent from doing huge flashy things.
It's very nicely flavorful as well. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I do think that is a card that would see play even at 4 AT, just because of Bunyip. Like literally just because of Bunyip. But like finding.
Let me see. 4 AT for 3 points. Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah. Plus getting a Bunyip in play, which is always great.
Plus, like you pull them out of your discard and your hand as well. You need to have 1 in your deck, so you can't, like, if they dismiss all 3 of your Bunyips, you can't do it again. Like,
right, you need to find the card in your deck first, and then the other stuff triggers.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be pretty fun. That's what I'm leaning towards right now. But again, I'm going to wait and see what Sequestria does. And maybe Sequestria will print no good cards in any color but yellow, and we just won't need to worry. And then I can build whatever. Because the problem with making a yellow card is yellow is my personal least favorite color to play. Pink is my favorite color to play. This should not be surprising because pink and yellow are opposite colors in this game.
Yeah.
So like designing a card for the color that I'm least wanting to play is just going to look like cards that white that should belong in another color, right? Though I think both of those cards are pretty yellow.
I don't disagree with you there. Okay. Well,
I guess my other thought, just for fun, would be to make a 3-color or 6-color card.
Cards with more than 2
that's
colors.
Not fire.
Would be
huh?
Sorry?
Yeah, I was saying that's not Firewind ready.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you mean like a friend, right?
Or maybe an event.
Or
6-color event.
Right, yeah.
If you control all of the main 6, gain 10 points. I don't know.
I was just going to say you control the main 6 win the game. It sounds like you're basically in that direction anyway. But, yeah.
If you control all of the main 6, banish all troublemakers and your opponent's hand and your opponent's board and your opponent's deck and continue play as normal.
Why not throw your opponent's problem deck in there too?
I think that brings an end to all the questions I wanted to ask. So, Solving, if you have anything else you wanted to throw Bugle's way.
Well, go on. As the winner of like big tourneys quite frequently, a lot of people online are saying that the competitive following is diminishing, and I'm just like, have you seen that yourself personally, or is it just kind of the same or bigger?
I mean, obviously, it's not as like if you look at Gen Con numbers. Obviously, this year was much smaller than last year. There's a lot of numbers that you could, or a lot of reasons you could contribute to that. Team Pandemonium couldn't make it, for example, and that's like 6 or 8 people right there. The long silence between marks and defenders definitely hurt, and they didn't do a very good job of announcing Gen Con, despite the fact that it was free for everyone. Like they said that once, and then no one knew what the prizes were until top 16. Like,
or like really until Chrysalis got leaked and everyone was like, oh.
Yeah. People like there was no official confirmation that Chrysalis was for Gen Con either. People speculated it was, but there was no confirmation. So I think there are a lot of reasons that it was not as great as it could have been. But like the cons have been seeing about similar numbers, sometimes higher, or rather the non-Gen Con cons, I should say. But yeah, like it definitely is lower. Like I can't point to numbers and say these numbers that are smaller are clearly bigger. Like, I mean, I could point to that and say that. I would be blatantly lying, but
So, sort of on the same vein, a lot of people at least when I'm looking online again, are saying that the issue is the Harmony format itself. And as it's not a sentiment I agree with, I'm wondering what your sort of opinion on what do you think would actually get people back into playing in a more competitive way and things like that? Is it heavy banning, like lots of people say maybe would help, or is it other formats? What do you think?
I don't think... Like, the only real issue with Harmony format is that we're seeing a lot of decks not evolve very much. Like, take, for example, Applejack farming. That, I think, really the only difference between Defenders and Marks and Time is it got Captain Jack. Literally the only difference. The thing with Harmony is we have a lot of cards, and if we don't have a lot of cards that are better than previous cards, then yeah, we're not going to see those new cards seeing play. Like if you look at my deck, for example, I had 7 Defenders cards. But I had cards from every single set, but a lot of those have been cards that have just proven themselves to be very good time and time again. Like I had more Premier cards in my deck than Defenders cards. And so I can see why people are sick of Harmony because they're seeing the same cards over and over and over again. Like how many tournaments has TSUV shown up in? How many tournaments has Gyro shown up in? Gyro has been in my Gen Con deck all 4 years as a 3-of, for example. So people are like, it does not surprise me that people are sick of seeing the same cards over and over again. So in addition to that, there's an availability issue. It's harder to get the older card. Like, it's not like impossible for sure. Like, you can get Camelot Knights cards for pretty cheap, but like Absolute Discord is harder to find. And Premier actually isn't that hard to find, but people don't want to invest much in the older sets, especially if the only cards they want are ultra rares, like in Premier. So I think it would actually be a good idea to phase out Block 1. And I think that Sequestria is a good time to do that as the start of probably Block 3. So we'll have 5 sets like we did in Odysseys. And I think that's fine. That being said, if you look at a lot of the competitive decks, you will notice that about 80+% of cards are coming from Odyssey's block. So really there's only a few offenders from Harmony right now. They just happen to be some of the best cards in the game. Your F-Stops, your Sips and Snails, your TSUVs, your Nightmare Moons.
That's something that I've actually noticed as a guy who, builds a deck every week. Generally, the Odysseys block is like what I work with, and then just go back to the Premier block for a couple of highlights, and that card was really good, that card was really good, etc., etc. Yeah. So, just as like added reinforcement to what you were saying there.
But yeah, I think the game could use some more variety. I think the one major issue I see with phasing out Harmony, and some people aren't going to see this as an issue at all, is that farming decks take a huge hit. Because most of the epics that they use are from Premier block. Your Nightmare Stars, your Nightmare Moons, your Alizodals, and your Tyrix. Like, all 4 of those, gone.
Sombra as well. He shows up in farming as
well.
Sombra.
Yeah, Sombra is gone as well. Those are all gone. Leaves you with Trixie, which they do use. New Chrysalis, which is hard to farm. Glimmer, which is, or rather 2 versions of Glimmer, one of which is hard to farm, and the other one is relatively risky.
Yeah.
So farming players will see a huge impact.
Right.
Control players will see a huge impact as well, simply because they lose TSUV, Gyro, and F-Stop, and a few other useful cards, but those are the 3 big ones in my mind. But there are a lot of good control options still in block. Doctor Who's, for example, is like, if you looked at my block deck, I went 5-0 with a block chaos deck. So like control can still function, but farming.
Well, yeah, as I've probably mentioned lots of times in streams, the UK Nationals was block, and I came first in the constructed segment with just pink-white control, because Party of One is completely ridiculous, especially when everyone relies on trading traditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you can get when sort of you rotate cards out is that you'll know, okay, well, all these epics are going, but that's, and I don't want to give advice to enter play too much more than I already have, but you can say, okay, if we don't want farming to go away, well, let's replace them with something that's a little bit different, and maybe farming evolves into something else.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there will be an epic in Sequestria.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be the main antagonist from the advert.
I feel that Sequestria is a good set to have 2 epics, especially for farming, phasing out set 1 or block 1, because that's taking more than half of the epics with it, like considerably more than half. I think it's almost 2/3.
Probably, because Equestrian Odysseys had
Equestrian Odysseys has 4, 5 if you want to count the weird Tyrrich. And the Premier era had 7.
Yeah, a lot more.
But yeah, I would definitely embrace a block shift.
Even though your main's going to be rotating out.
Even though Pink will no longer have a good main, and I'll lose my huge control cards, and yes.
Hey, Pink has a good main. It's just also all the other colors.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed we would get to that topic eventually. It's kind of our favorite topic of discussion. Meticulous talks pretty much is harmony. So, yeah, well, like I said, we've been at this for 90 minutes or so.
Quite a while.
Unless you had anything else you wanted to ask, Solomon?
Well, it's all just like very small questions, like favorite set.
Favorite set. Probably Absolute Discord. Absolute Discord changed the game the most, I feel. It did a lot of things right that the previous sets just did wrong, and it introduced chaos, which is a good mechanic. It's one that I knew was going to happen from Candlelit Knights. I'm like, you know what? They're absolutely going to, at some point, have a card set, or, you know, when this card is flipped, do something. Like, that's just such obvious card design.
Space.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it happened, and it was pretty fun. It was also the first set that I got to playtest, a luxury I no longer am allowed, unfortunately, due to my job. But it was fun seeing the cards before other people, and getting the chance to influence some of those cards. Especially since I was basically brought on board as a combo buster. Like, I was specifically told, you know, we don't have much time left between release and now. So if you find any cards that you feel are especially combo problematic, please let us know. And I pointed at like 3 different cards. Like, these 3 cards seem awkward at best. And they all changed. So, but yeah, Absolute Discord was pretty cool. The chaos mechanic was cool. It had a lot of strong cards that just felt good. Like, the major problem with Crystal Games was all your friends were overcosted, and that didn't feel true in Absolute Discord. I mean, some friends were overcosted. Some friends, like, why did they even exist aside from the fact that it's a huge joke? Haha, gummy. Also, it introduced everyone to Nightmare Star, which is fantastic and way better than Daybreaker. Shots fired.
Ooh.
Anyway, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, that's it. It's
okay.
Just Absolute Discord. Yeah.
All right.
And then in lieu of that, favorite card that hasn't been designed by someone external due to blah 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 reasons.
So that you can't pick your own, basically.
Oh no.
Yeah.
My favorite card is still and probably always will be Changeling Infiltrator. The reason for that is because when we were making One Pace, let's go back to before that. When we were getting Candlelit Knights spoilers, one of the first spoilers we got was Changeling Infiltrator, which everyone universally agreed was the worst troublemaker ever. It was it was about as bad as Flim. They were both three power, 1 bonus, and they don't do much. Whatever. Shuffle your deck. Who cares? So then when we were making One Pace and we realized, hey, we're going to go through our entire deck. How do we get our deck back into our, how do we get our discard back into our deck? And we all went, well, Changeling Infiltrator is clearly a bad card, but it's clearly the correct card here. And then, we started accepting it as an okay card. And then after that, the first regionals happened, and there were two big decks hit the scene, Ballroom Blitz and Pegasus Explosion. And one thing Pegasus Explosion did that blew people away was they were using Changeling Infiltrator's Uncover ability to just block a problem immediately. This is like, I'm playing aggro, and I can't win this turn, but you can win next turn. So I'm just going to play a friend and then uncover my friend and put a Changeling here, and now you can't confront that problem. And people were just not thinking of the application of turning a friend over, or a Troublemaker over immediately. So Changeling Infiltrator went from like the worst Troublemaker ever, everyone just agreed this card is awful, to incredibly busted in both control decks and aggro decks, and even control decks, like just really good. So I just like the rags to riches stories there. Plus, it happened to be one that I personally was invested in. That was the first major deck that I made, and so on and so forth. That being said, the card that I collect is Globetrotter, because that is the card that we got banned from that Gen Con.
Sure.
And
everything else I kind of had to ask has been kind of just addressed through chatter, so I'm very good.
Well, I think that we've been at it for a pretty long, good enough amount of time.
Okay.
As I sort of said at the start of the stream, Ebugle has a blog that you should all check out. Jason Flutter Explain. One of the sort of better resources for learning about the game, or at least learning about sort of, I guess, you cover kind of intermediate to advanced tactical considerations and strategic considerations for play.
I'd say mostly I cover basic stuff. Like I explain like how different mains work, and how you might want to build around them, how mechanics work, how you might want to build around them, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in addition, you've got a Congo's Magic stream tonight, so I should give you an opportunity to shamelessly plug it if you want.
Well, we're going to be talking about two control decks. The control deck that I played and got first place with, and the control deck that Grand Paws played and got top 16 with. So both of these are reasonable options for play. You might do okay with them. We found that the deck discourse was pretty popular, so we're just trying to probably do those maybe once a month or so. Just find some decks that are interesting and cool and talk about them.
Plus tonight you have
so we also do have a special announcement today at the end of the stream.
Yeah,
so
top secret big surprise.
Yeah.
Everyone's been wondering about for
absolutely. Well, 1 week. But it's cool. I think this is a worthwhile one to watch. I think they're all worthwhile to watch, but if you're going to watch only one stream today that wasn't already this stream, I highly recommend the only other option.
How do you know I'm not going to stream something this afternoon? No, I'm not. I have to make myself lunch. Anyway, I should say thank you very much for your time.
Of course.
Oh, and I thought of the final question because it's just kind of dumb. Opinions on Prismatic?
Oh, on Prismatic? Fun mechanic handled poorly.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Though honestly, the thing that was really handled poorly wasn't the Prismatic cards. It was the Crystal Pony entry. If they had just cost 2,
There would be no problem.
Oh, if it was 2 for 2s, I'd still be running Prismatic to this day.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Fun mechanic, handled awkwardly at best.
Yeah, Crystal Games was it was a set.
Yeah.
I feel like that
being
statement could
said-
probably summarize the set.
Yeah. That being said, one Crystal Pony did see a lot of play for a long time. So this would be Pinkie Pie.
Oh right, yeah.
Because she just flips you an extra card.
Right, yeah. Okay, so I think I'm going to call it there.
Okay.
Yep. Of course, as I say, thank you so much, people, for showing up. Wish you the best of luck in for all your endeavors. Of course, the year to come.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, and I'll kind of remind everyone that we here at Meticulous Talks are on a strict 2-week cadence. What with Sequestria sort of on the horizon, I expect that soon we're going to be doing our sort of, as I said, our kind of meta review of Defenders of Equestria, sort of talking about which cards we got right, which cards we got wrong, which of us was closer in terms of our ratings. I've been saving that spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
Not that I can remember, but probably you.
Oh,
so there's bragging rights on the line.
kind of, yeah. That's, that said, we're both going to be really far off because, as I said, a lot of our ratings are predicated on the idea that yellow is going to work again because thorax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was both of them. I thought both of them might do something, and it didn't quite come to fruition.
For the first year ever, we saw 0 cards of a particular color making top 16. There was last year there were some yellow cards. The year before there were some yellow cards, and the first year there was some of everything.
Yeah.
But no yellow cards this year in top 16.
Do you think we should just get rid of the color? Just go down to 5 like Magic has, and it'll be fine. No one will miss it.
Yeah, sure.
You're talking about completely banning my life from the game here. So you're hurting me. No, sorry, she's in blue. She's in blue. That's right. Yeah.
There is
First, I
a
can
purple
just be
Celestia.
like,
That's correct. She's
There-
purple as well.
There is also an orange Celestia.
Half, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, that's going to be a thing that we're going to do at some point in the future. First, obviously, we're going to have to agree on what sort of the real ratings of the cards are. And so we'll have a conversation about that. But yeah, that's going to conclude the stream. I've been Chris, of course,
I've been solving problems.
and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
See ya.